Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? I think we need a bit of like wake-up session. You guys all seem a bit drowsy. Have you gotten enough coffee in you? Okay, great. This next session is going to be, I believe, a very interesting and insightful one. We're going to be discussing quite a bit on viewability, brand safety, and ad fraud. Since in today's world, like for digital ads to make any impact, they have to be seen, not just served. However, nearly half of the digital ads out there are not viewable. The guys will correct my information if I'm wrong. They're like sitting there writing notes already. Leading brands have been overhauling their digital strategies this year following a lot of widespread publicity about brand safety and ad fraud. So what this panel will be doing is they'll be discussing the best practices on how marketeers can ensure the safety of their brands, combat ad fraud, and the common pitfalls advertisers face in this respect. Please help me welcome Mustafa Ismail, Regional Director at DMS, and Ayman Haider, CEO at MENA Marketplace. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We have quite a bit to cover, quite a lot to cover. So let's just dive right into it. And I want to highlight something to the audience. We've been doing a lot of these panels recently. I've had these discussions with Mustafa and Ayman on quite a few times within the past year alone. And the reason being that we keep repeating this this topic on viewability especially is it's an evolving, never-evolving,
never-ending
practice, let's say?
Discussion.
So let's start with taking a look at how things have been evolving within the last 2 years in terms of viewability. What has changed? Where are we today? And what do we expect for 2018?
Sure. So I think a lot has changed in the past year alone. We have seen a lot of whistleblowers. We have seen a lot of action. We have seen a lot of companies and big brands cut their budgets for reasons that we knew for quite some time existed. But I think the brands started to look at the very basics of their hygiene. How clean is my brand today when it comes to advertising? And if I jump straight into the topic today, I think to talk about the 3 different topics or the 3 different subtopics within today's discussion, the very first step for a brand is the ad that I'm buying on digital. Is a human actually seeing this ad or is a robot? Okay, it's a human. That's step 1. That's good news. But then step 2, is it viewable or not viewable? And step 3, if it is viewable, is it actually in a brand safe environment or is it in an environment that's very risky and dangerous for the brand itself?
Right.
And if you compare 2015 and 16, there was a lot of discussion on these topics because it's very obvious that there's a big issue there. But 2017, I would say, was the year where there was action taken from big brands like P&G, like Unilever, like Coke, like Pepsi, and then the list goes on even to the local clients. And we have seen this happen in the region, whether it was in Saudi or in UAE. So if you want to look at 2017, I would say it was the year where the whistle was blown.
Not much to add on what Mustafa mentioned, but today brands look at themselves the way we check our safety when we're, for example, driving a car. So the journey is happening the way we started when we drove cars. Back in the days, there were no seat belts, there were no airbags, there were nothing. Safety of a person driving a car is equivalent to the safety of a brand during its journey on the internet. So I would say that we are evolving. So the more we go and use digital, the more we know about what's happening on digital. And technology is moving so fast that it's allowing us and helping us to understand more how things go and how things work. So looking at things, and as Mustafa said, last year, for example, versus what's happening in 2017, yes, we spoke a lot about viewability, and we spoke a lot about how to enforce that and how to save the money that's being spilled from for every dollar that is being paid for the impressions that we need to reach. And back then, there was a lot of ambiguity around this specific subject. Today, there are a lot of measuring tools that help us understand and measure and see where we are today. The only problem is that no one wants to wait. Everybody wants to jump into a speed car. Everybody wants to go, everybody wants things to happen now. So publishers are forced to change today, and they're not giving enough time to do the change until tomorrow. And I think that is allowing a lot of mistakes to happen. And it's probably driving this exercise, I wouldn't say in the wrong direction, but anything that happens quickly doesn't happen properly. Brands woke up one day and they decided they want to go up from as low as 5 to 20% viewability in some cases to plus 50 or plus 55% and even to 70% viewability. That is not a thing that can happen just as fast. There are so many things that a publisher needs to do in order for them to reach that. And having said that, we can't just decide today that, you know what, this was off, just switch it on, and tomorrow viewability will jump to 70%. So what we saw in 2017 is all those measures being taken by publishers to be moved back from the blacklist that those brands created into the whitelist again, because they've lost a lot of money. Now, that subject and brand safety has a lot of other factors involved that makes us ask a lot of questions on that front. Is the brand paying enough money for them to get what they're asking for? Is it enough? I mean, today you're asking for a lot of things, and everything has a cost. So brands want a very big list of terms and conditions for their brands to be safe. They want viewability, they want, but are they paying for that to allow those publishers to do it? So there are so many things that we need to discuss post the publishers getting into viewability and deciding on how safe their environment is for brands and so on and so forth. Yes, things have changed from the last time we actually discussed this matter, but we have a long way to go, I think.
It's sounding like P&G's ultimatum really impacted the industry. If we look at it, it sounds like a crusade to clean up the digital media industry as well, the digital supply chain. Has it done so in a positive way? It sounds like there's a bit of negatives to it since everybody rushed into it. Has there been any positives toward it, though? Any benefits?
I think it was very positive. So this was actually led by their chief brand officer, who was Mark Pritchard, and he's been causing a lot of waves in the industry because, yes, as Ayman said, very quickly and without big alarms, he went in one of the conferences and said, we as P&G are wasting 40% of our digital money and we're no longer going to give digital a pass. So we're going to clean up the mess and we're going to make sure that the efficiencies of our spend make sense. Of course, P&G being one of the leaders in the industry, if not one of the biggest leaders, a lot of the brands followed. And they took P&G as an example of where they want to be as well. And then it was just a snowball effect. And the second each brand started to look into details like brand safety, like viewability, they realized that the waste is huge. Today in this room, if you've ever worked on a digital campaign in the past 2 years or 3 years, the chances are that 40%, 50% of your money was completely wasted.
If not more.
If not more. So this is a huge alarming point here, and it's not a matter where it can wait anymore. So with the current economic situation in the world, and where every single brand is trying to really ensure the highest levels of efficiencies, such things are just not acceptable anymore. And I think I would disagree with Ayman on one point where it was too fast. I think it took a bit too long for that to happen. We knew that there were issues as digital marketeers in 2014 and 2015 when spends in the world were over 60 and 70 billion dollars. So these issues were always existing, but nobody took a direction and nobody took, like you said, a crusade kind of attitude to fix these issues. So I think it was very positive for three reasons. One, it made sure that the publishers have started to clean up their inventory and sort out their pricing, which is a huge issue that Ayman briefly touched upon, but I think we're going to be talking in more detail about that. But publishers started to clean up. Then we started to see new technologies that started to show up in the region, such as Moat, for example, to kind of give us a proper measurement across things that we didn't have a measurement on before in the region, such as viewability and brand safety and so on. And thirdly, it was a wake-up call for those brands to start to look into where they're spending their money and how efficient overall is their marketing campaigns. So in my opinion, I think it was a very positive situation.
I'll definitely second that. I mean, it's definitely a positive position. And just to clarify, I didn't say it moves fast. I said they wanted it fast. So they wanted this to happen overnight, which was too soon for publishers to react to that. So no, of course not. On the contrary, that actually is a very positive thing for the market. And it's very important that today we operate in a very safe environment. It's very important that we know every single impression that we do spend and work on, that it's going in the right direction and it's being viewed by actual real people. So when it comes to how positive it was a must. And it was a must to happen sooner rather than later. The only problem is that they wanted it to happen immediately, and they want publishers to change immediately, so they put everybody on a blacklist, while they should have given a heads up and said, you know what, this is a big issue, so let's try to work on it, and given a time frame of X, let's make it happen. Going back to what you said, I wouldn't call it a crusade. I would say, every single time a crisis happens, there's a correction in the market. And usually it happens in the banking sector. Now, when an economic crisis happens, the correction happens across all industries. And in that particular case, it's digital. So they wanted to weigh if this dollar's value is actually a dollar. And because of technology, they found out that, well, that dollar is not a dollar anymore, because they're only, it's only worth 40% of its price or 20% of its price due to viewability, and even less due to brand safety. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to have this correction, because today, if I have a dollar to spend in an economic crisis, I need to make sure I spend it smartly. And I need to make sure that when I want to spend this dollar needs to be as effective as a dollar. So I definitely second what Mustafa said, and today they wanted to make sure that if there is a spillover there, it needs to be as minimal as possible. And having those measures, the likes of Moat or IAS or any other platform that measures viewability or Adfraud or if you go and check the brand safety around where the brand or the brand environment, we need to make sure that this dollar value is as close as possible to a dollar. Yeah. And this is where I say it's not a crusade, but it's a correction. So, yeah.
Well, back when we spoke at ArabNet Beirut earlier this year, one of the things that were highlighted in that session at the time is that there's a need for the region to have an industry standard methodology on measuring these metrics, or like benchmark metrics. What has been done with that? Has there anything, because at the time you mentioned probably forming an IAB in the region, are there any updates in that area?
I think we'll hear good news soon enough. We are in the process. There's a lot of positivity from all sides, whether it's the agency, the brands, the publishers, that there's a or the technology partners, that there's a definite need for a governing body, or let's say an advisory board on digital, where everybody sits around on one table and agree on what to use and what's right and what's wrong, and agree on ways forward. And the IAB worldwide has done that to a certain extent almost all over the world. So what we're trying to do here is we need to get a GCC version of the IAB to this region, and we are, let's say, almost there. So once this happens, probably we'll have, let's call it an advisory board,
Right.
to tell us on what is accepted and what is not accepted when it comes to digital. So what is right, what is wrong, and again, I call it advisory because there are going to be a lot of people who might disagree with what the IAB is saying, because at the end of the day, they don't govern digital, but they are the trusted digital authority that we know about in the world.
I think the most interesting thing that happened in 2017 on that level was the introduction of Moat. And we've seen that there are certain brands that had a very specific rule: if you're not Moat certified, we're not going to be on your platform or on your website. And the good thing about Moat is that it's a third party that measures viewability and Adfraud across all websites and all platforms, including the tech platforms. And that kind of gives a kind of comfort to the brands, and it's also very fair for the publishers because you're playing on the same field.
Another topic we'd like to discuss and talk about is that brands want their ads to start running, or they don't start, it's like it's always been the case. They want to ensure that their ads are running next to content that they can be proud of, that they'd like to associate with. We've seen a lot of issues within this year, globally and possibly regionally, on a lot of ads running in very inappropriate places. I think you can give some examples of some of those, if possible. And what can we do to navigate brand safety as well?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a disaster. There's situations that are quite hilarious, actually, and you've seen, I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of those shared and trending examples. One of my favorite, or not my favorite, I want to put it that way, but one of the ones that really made me laugh was an ISIS recruitment video on YouTube, and under it is a telco ad saying subscribe for $5. Another very disturbing one was one I've seen in The Guardian, actually, where it was an article about them catching a child molester, and above it is an ad for diapers. There's some really horrible examples. One in the region that I've seen was the bomb that happened in Sharm el-Sheikh 2 years ago. And next to it was an ad for a very big airline in the region talking about falling prices. So there are some horrendous examples, and what you actually pay for better marketing and higher brand metrics in a situation like that, you've lost a lot of money and you have a lot of fixing to do, and you're going to probably pay more to fix that. So there's really a lot of examples that we've seen. I gave some of the more extreme ones, but every day we can see a lot of that happening. I think it's a process that goes into pre-campaign, during, and then post-campaign. And a pre-campaign level, you really need to think about what or where are my ads going to show. And the more comfortable and less blind you are in terms of where your ads are going to be showing, probably the more expensive the impression is going to be. So compare a blind programmatic network to a premium independent site. The chances are that the premium independent site is going to have a much higher CPM, and the graph goes accordingly with everything in the middle. So you need to think about where is it going to be, basically the impression, before the campaign starts. During the campaign needs a lot of moderation, and it needs a team that really looks into where are my ads showing today, where is it going to be showing tomorrow, What about the ads that already showed before? And you need to moderate what's happening. Post-campaign, you need to start looking at the results of that and really go and dig deep and have an analysis of each campaign and where did my brand show overall from the different campaigns I had this month or this year. And accordingly start to optimize to ensure that your brand is as safe as possible. Because you really cannot afford to be in an environment that's not safe for your brand. And we've seen the results this year. Huge cuts with some of the biggest players.
How do you monitor brand safety, though?
See, there's a lot of ways, and today technology has evolved so much, and to the extent that we can actually get our own third-party monitoring tools to monitor. I wouldn't say brand safety in general, because brand safety in general requires work from both sides of the process. So, but for example, if you want to talk about viewability, which definitely has to do with brand safety, if you want to talk about fraudulent traffic, you can definitely monitor that using tools that we have today, the likes of Mode, the likes of IAS, there's a lot of, even Google themselves, which is not a third party, but they can also monitor that themselves. Before I just jump into this, I just want to add to what Mustafa was saying. There is the negative in all this. The negative is that those who are preaching about brand safety and those who are preaching about the fact that we will not accept to run on non-brand safe environments and low viewability and so on and so forth are the same people who are actually using the most out of the non-safe suppliers, not to mention names, Google and Facebook. So that's possibly where brands are. They keep bombarding publishers about the fact that, you know what, brand safety is a big issue, viewability is a bigger issue. If you don't have a third-party monitoring tool, we will not go and advertise with you guys. You will not see us on your environment. Yet, all we hear in news, or all we see, and those examples that Mustafa spoke about, are part of, or they were shown on a Google or a Facebook platform. But that doesn't mean they are the only ones doing that. No, there's a lot of publishers using content which is not safe, or they have unsafe environments, and everybody needs to work together. But today, if you want to preach and you want to show people that you're really serious about that, then don't blacklist some and keep others. You need to treat everybody the same, or else don't do it. We need to do it, so let's do it across the board.
But then this takes me back again to how do you navigate through this?
Well, it goes back to the brands and the risk they want to take by actually taking this big decision on moving out of this. But again, I was having a discussion with Mustafa, and maybe he can elaborate more on some graph he did. So I'll tell you the end result. He will tell you how probably he worked this out. Today for us, you know, you pay peanuts. I'm not going to continue the way it is, but you pay peanuts, you get low quality. Yeah. And if you want to go cheap, you will not reach where you want to reach. And don't expect to pay cheap and get something good or a good return. It might happen that you do it, but there are a lot of factors involved when you pay cheap, that you will be bombarded or hit by an unsafe environment, or you're going to have a problem later on. So you can't ask for it all and just pay peanuts for it. You need to understand that the same way you accept to walk into brands that cost thousands of dollars versus brands that cost $100, you need to accept the fact that, and those same brands which are thousands of dollars will never give you a discount, while others might give 2 plus 5 or 1 plus 4 or whatever the case is. It's the same thing online. Today, you know for a fact that when you want to buy high-end, you will get high-end. So unless you want to really invest into brand safety, you will never reach brand safety. And this is crucial for all of us, right? So maybe Mustafa can tell us more on his exercise that he did. But today, again, it's as simple as you cannot ask for more if you want to keep paying those cheap prices. Don't be cheap, right?
I think it's a matter of expectation. Today, if I'm a brand and I want to ensure that my impression is showing in a brand safe environment with high viewability and there's no ad fraud and the content is interesting and the site looks beautiful and I still want to pay that same amount of money that I'm going to spend there into the same amount of money that I'm spending in a blind programmatic marketplace, it doesn't make sense. Because you're an editor, right?
Right.
So if you're working today for a website and that website is
Wish I do, news.arabnet.me. Thank you very much. Some shameful promotion right there.
No, it's okay. So today this website has editors that they're paying salaries for, that they know exactly what they're going to be speaking about, that have a clear content calendar, and from a brand safe environment, it's a very brand safe environment and brands can understand that. They need to pay a bit more there in comparison to a blind programmatic marketplace. But even, talking about Google and Facebook, and this is where the pre-planning part comes into play. A lot of the content on Facebook and YouTube is user-generated, and people are unpredictable. As an editor, you're predictable up to a certain level on what you might write, and if you go way offline, there's an editor-in-chief that comes into play and be like, okay, that's not going to be ideal. But I can't predict what this person and that person anywhere in the world is going to say and where my ad is going to show after or before that comment. Or what kind of video is going to be created on YouTube and whether my ad is going to show as a pre-roll or not. Now, the tech players took very serious steps towards that discussion, and they worked a lot on fixing this issue. Is it 100% fixed? Probably not. But is it getting better? Definitely.
Okay, that's positive to hear at least. Sounded very dramatic in the beginning, and then we ended it with a positive way. But let's take a look at ad fraud as well. Can we resolve ad fraud? Is the industry doing anything to tackle this, or what can be done to tackle ad fraud?
I think when you talk about ad fraud بالعربي الفصيح نصب. So there is no other word to put it. نصب علني. So I think that that websites or platforms or any organization that is involved in ad fraud should be very, very, very severely punished. Yes. We're at a stage where this is just unacceptable.
I think we've got some numbers with us over here. According to Juniper Research, ad fraud may cost the advertising industry up to $19 billion in 2018.
Yes. Yes. You're literally talking about billions of dollars. Now, the thing that surprises me the most, and that
some countries' debt sometimes.
Yeah. The thing that surprises me personally the most is that ad fraud is probably, from the three topics that we're discussing today, is probably the easiest one to identify. Because we have a lot of technologies now in hand that are able to tell you whether this traffic is robots or humans, is it bots, is it fake traffic, is it the same IP going in and out? There's so many technologies that we have in place. Why aren't publishers putting these technologies in place, and why are publishers giving wrong information is something that is beyond me. So, and beyond my understanding at least, because it's easy to understand whether this traffic is fraudulent or not. Technologies are there.
I don't understand then how do we expect $19 billion? Like, what's not being done, or what's... I'm confused to why are the numbers so...
I said it at the beginning, right?
Nasib.
Nasib.
$19 billion of nasib by publishers?
Well, by a whole ecosystem, right? So the ecosystem itself from the beginning to the end, and we're not talking here on a regional level, we're talking on, it's a global level. $19 billion is a global number, of course. On a global level, yes, you have publishers that are getting away with things that are not acceptable, and on the other side of the spectrum, you have low-end brands that are willing to sacrifice anything and sacrifice their money and going into wrong places. Why that's happening is a bigger question. But even on a bigger scale, such situations now are put in place in the States where the FBI is investigating. So
Because my next question was if IAB or another governing body was going to do something on this.
Just to maybe we need to take a small step backwards and look at the different platforms there is in advertising. So the reason why it's a very big Adfraud is a very big thing on digital is because technology is able to actually track this. So if we take this step back and look at different platforms or different vehicles used in advertising, the problem there is that there might be Adfraud, and it might be as big or even bigger than digital. The only difference is that in a lot of cases, you cannot really monitor that. In digital, you have different platforms that can monitor that. But take, for example, outdoor, or any different platform, or print. So what are the means that we are using today to really monitor that, or to know whether those the reach that anyone is claiming is right? Now, in digital, it became a very big story because experts found a way to actually track that. And when they did, they actually materialized that. They changed it into dollars, and hence the number that you've seen. So ad fraud, yes, is a big thing. But the moment you have a monitoring tool that started telling those brands what they need and how to operate and how many people or what's the reach that they got behind a specific advertising campaign, is when they started forcing publishers or cornering them into getting more traffic. Now you have two ways. You can go the right way and keep on getting less money, invest, and then reach a stage where your traffic becomes genuine and big enough for you to accommodate what the brands want. Or you can choose the easy way out, not knowing that in the future, a third-party technology might come and point a finger at you and say, well, busted. You actually have fraudulent traffic, and you have a huge percentage of fraudulent traffic on your website that you shouldn't actually be operating at all. So yes, that's a big thing, but technology today is smart enough to detect it. But don't underestimate Nassabin, right? So as smart as those technologies are in detecting those people, on the other side, you have a lot of smart people trying to cheat the system. So this is going to be a never-ending story, and it's always going to pop up every single time we talk, and there are always different ways to do that.
But I think one of the reasons that when you talk about offline media, one of the reasons that initially drove some of the movement of the budgets from offline media onto online media was the transparency part.
True.
That you can measure everything, people were tired of the words like circulation and reach, that's not 100% measurable. But when you look at digital, the idea was, yes, I can measure everything. It's easy to measure, and then comes these topics.
Of course.
So it becomes
None is
even
perfect.
worse.
None is perfect.
What do you guys think is required within the industry or for the industry to enhance and improve, especially when it comes to viewability, especially in our region? I'm not talking globally. What are we still lacking on right now today?
I think that does bring us back to the fact that we really need some experts in digital, and it's a third party that is a joint effort between the publishers, the brands, and the agencies, the likes of IAB, to start in this region so that we get to the education part, because education is one of the most important parts that leads to solving almost all those issues. So by learning more about how they can solve them and how to treat the problems that they have, be transparent about those specific problems, is how we actually get to solving those issues. But today, if you are not brave enough to come and say, well, you know what, I have 20% fraudulent traffic that let's claim they don't know about, and I want to sort it out, it becomes a bit easier than trying to hide it and people actually finding out the hard way. So education is a very, very big part of it. There's a lot of ways to do it. Third-party tools help them detect what is wrong in their platform, the likes of Mode, for example, or again, IIS, or all those software. So they can help them detect what is going on their back end that is driving the viewability to go down, maybe causing them problem on the website. What is the amount of this fraudulent traffic? Because this is good. It's like certifying that you are clear. Just getting an ISO certification that say on a website that says, listen guys, I've done my homework. I am clean. I have a brand safe environment. This means you can come and now advertise on my platform.
So I think three things. From an ad fraud perspective, publisher has to do a big role here. One, audit your website. Make sure it's clean. Make sure that the people who are actually viewing your website are humans and not robots. That's on one aspect. And the other aspect, stop using sleazy clickbaits of, hey, this, fake news.
Did everybody hear that? Please hear that. I'm so done with clickbaits.
So I think all of us have went through an experience where we click on a topic on social media, links it to the site, and it has nothing to do with the topic that we clicked on. So work on these two things, because even from a clickbait perspective, it's not fraud traffic, completely fraud traffic, right. But then the engagement levels and your bounce rates are going to be very bad, therefore lower viewability and less results and with brands, etc., etc. This is from an ad fraud perspective. From a viewability perspective, look at your website and start looking at different, and we actually as DMS, we've invested a lot of time and money and effort into ensuring that we have the highest viewability across the region, highest viewability metrics across the region. Ensure that the ad placements are not too cluttered and that they are in areas where it's above the fold. So according to IAB standards, 1 second, 50% pixel is considered a viewable ad, which is not, it's not that much of a very extreme metric. So and it shouldn't be that difficult to achieve.
Yet viewability is at like 30, 40%.
40%, yes. Not on the MS websites though. So we're at 65 to 70% across most of our websites. In some cases, we reach 90%. But that led to a lot of work. It led to a lot of effort. So ensure that your ads are viewable and ensure that you have a third-party measurement tool so that when you have a brand like Unilever, that this is actually a true story, that came up to us and told us, if you're not Mode certified, we're not going to be spending $1 on your platforms. So this is obviously something that's very, very critical. And then the third part, when it comes to brand safety, make sure that what you're speaking about or what you're writing or whatever your topics are well, according to certain metrics. You can be a platform or website that talks about extreme measures in certain areas or extreme harsh topics, but then I wouldn't expect you to have a lot of advertising from brands. But if you're a website or a platform that's expecting a lot of advertising from brands, ensure that you adhere to certain standards when it comes to brand safety overall. And from a tech player perspective, so the likes of Google or Facebook and so on, the areas that they don't control today, they started to talk about signing in, and once signed in, certain videos are only going to be the ones which have certain ads, and that obviously decreased their inventory. At DMS, we've seen that across Dailymotion. When we had to clean up Dailymotion completely, we've seen a huge drop not a huge drop in inventory, but a huge drop in inventory that we can advertise on. And this is something that we knew we had to take the measures for.
Okay. I'd like to move it to the audience now. If there's any questions from the audience. Anybody? There we go. Two over here. He's just getting you a microphone, so.
Hi, thank you for raising this topic today. Can you name some of the third-party audit for verifying the impression, if it's real or not? Can you name some?
Sure. So I can speak about the one that we use at DMS. I don't have a lot of knowledge about the facilities and the other ones in detail, but I can definitely tell you about Moat, M-O-A-T. So we introduced Moat to the region around a year ago, and if you look at the Moat dashboard, it's a very interesting dashboard. So it tells you whether this ad was fraudulent or not. It tells you the level of viewability that you have, so the percentage of viewability. But also, interestingly enough, it looks at metrics such as hovering, scrolling over an ad, amount of seconds of attention on a specific display ad. There's even discussions on advertisers starting to spend on numbers of seconds of each viewable display ad in the UK. And you can imagine what that entails. But it also has another interesting factor where, if let's say you're an automotive brand and you have the results of your campaign, it starts to benchmark your campaign success towards other automotive brands within the same vertical and within similar campaigns. So this is Moat, and we actually send a lot of Moat reports to our brands and our clients in most of the campaigns and most of the categories.
Okay. Oh, can we just one more? One more.
He's there.
Oh, there's two more.
It's fine.
Well,
Jad, two more.
Hello. Yeah. What about mobile platform, mobiles and app? How can you monitor that?
In terms of
Mobile app.
Adfraud,
Yes.
so I think we touched upon that in terms of there are still technologies out there that are able to monitor whether these certain apps are clean or not. But it's a good point that you've raised there, because it's much more difficult to monitor ad fraud on mobile applications. Yes, it's on
Only
mobile.
60?
More. Yes, I think from a mobile website perspective, it's easier, but when it comes to mobile apps and in-app in specific, it becomes much more difficult. So, back to the point that yes, there are technologies that are able to monitor and kind of give us red flags in certain areas. And I think another big issue with in-app is that a lot of the ads there are programmatic, and it's programmatic on the blind network approach. So we have a much bigger issue on that front. But if you have the right technologies in place, you will still be able to figure out where the ad fraud is happening.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to, and Mustafa's gonna be around. He's gonna be, actually, DMS has a booth right over here by the entrance of the hall. Please feel free to
مرتضى عنده سؤال، مش هناخد مرتضى؟
Come on, everybody.
حاولت.
Mustafa and Ayman are still gonna be around. You can stalk them, chase them throughout the day, find them, remember their faces, look at their faces properly. There's an elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the room, Jad. It's an elephant in the room. We need to know what the elephant in the room is.
You've wasted time. Just ask the question.
Do it.
So are we looking into just half a second, 1 second, 50% of the banner? So the definition exactly.
That's what's going to
that's a
be
good
defined
question.
by
That's
the
actually a
IAB,
very
right?
good. That's actually a fantastic question. Yes. See, the problem is, the question is that is the 1 second a right metrics to use to determine whether an ad is viewable or
The
not?
question actually it's for the client. So here, the client should be actually aware of this. So if we're looking into viewability, the client should drive this, because at the end it's his money. We're all happy as agencies, as publishers, as the clients. Okay, we got 0.1 CPC, 1 cent. We got the CPV on X platform. We're actually happy with it, right? So clients were happy, and agents were actually driving this forward. Yet we weren't actually happy to pay more premium for videos on specific platforms. So clients should understand this as well, and there we should pay money if we need to.
Is this a question?
Premium. They're just clarifying it. So to reach the final, I would say, the client should agree on a certain way how going to my question, what is the standard?
A standard is when people from different ends or platforms. So here, take all the stakeholders, the brands, the agencies, the creative agencies, the suppliers, the research agencies, and the monitoring or research, the auditing firms to sit around one table and agree on that. But I think this is in the next life probably. Yeah? Not in this life.
All right, I'm going to have to cut this here now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I've decided to stay. Actually, I am staying.